You will regret not witnessing how the US Navy and its Middle Eastern allies turn a hidden Iranian nuclear nightmare into a 30,000-pound lesson in ultimate consequences. 3:12 a.m., the southern edge of the Zagros Mountains. Inside the Combat Information Center of the USS Abraham Lincoln, a senior sensor analyst stares at a ground-penetrating radar feed provided by a loitering RQ-180 stealth drone. CO Combat. We have an anomaly at Sector 7 Delta. It's located 400 feet below the rubble of the Phantom base we leveled 4 hours ago. Spectral analysis confirms uranium-235 particulates in the ventilation exhaust. Thrawn didn't just build a decoy base. They built a secret laboratory underneath the decoy. The discovery sent a shockwave through Central Command. The previous strike, which dismantled the coastal fastboat docks, was only the opening act. Beneath the limestone shelf of the Zagros Range, Iran had hidden a second invincible nuclear facility, a labyrinth of secret tunnels that looked like a digital spiderweb on the US displays. Trine went berserk, immediately activating every hidden air defense unit and ballistic missile battery in the region. The US was no longer looking for a skirmish. They were looking for total subterranean eraser. But to crack a mountain, they needed more than just American steel. They needed a regional coalition. The logistics of attacking a deep, fortified bunker in the heart of Iran require more than just raw power. They require a system of systems. Within an hour of the rivet joint's discovery, the US activated its regional partnerships. This was the Middle East air defense architecture in its first live high-intensity test. Israel provided the tip of the spear, a squadron of F-35E Adir. These fifth-generation stealth jets were the only platforms capable of navigating the complex electromagnetic environment of the Zagros Range without being painted by Iran's remaining long-range sensors. The United Arab Emirates and Jordan the Tran knew the US was coming. They had anticipated that their first base would fall, and they had used that time to turn the surrounding Zagros valleys into a radar-silent ambush zone. As the Allied flight package crossed the border, the Iranians didn't turn on their big detectable radars. Instead, they used passive sensors to track the heat of the jet's engines reflected off the mountain walls. Hidden in the deep crevices of the granite were legacy MM-23 Hawk batteries and the newer, more lethal Bavar 373 systems. These units were operating on hardened fiber optic cables, meaning the US signals intelligence couldn't hear them talking to each other. Missile launch 3 o'clock, it's coming from the canyon floor. A Jordanian F-16 Block 60 flying low-level escort was the first to feel the bite of the mountain. An Iranian Bavar 373 missile launched from a camouflage truck inside a cave. The pilot had less than 4 seconds to react. He dumped flares and pulled a violent 9G brake, but the mountain terrain limited his maneuverability. The missile's proximity fuse triggered, shredding the F-16's engine. The A-10 Warthogs on station immediately banked into a low-altitude daisy chain. The lead pilot stabilized his nose and squeezed the trigger of the GAU-8 Avenger. The 30mm cannon chewed through the limestone ridge where an Iranian Manpads team was repositioning for a second shot. Red dust and stone fragments sprayed into the air as the depleted uranium rounds punched through the cave mouth, collapsing the overhang. Target neutralized. Second team moving in from the north ridge. I'm rolling in for a second pass with Hydra rockets. The pilot flipped the armament switch, dove toward the valley floor, and unleashed a salvo of folding fin rockets that turned the Iranian staging area into a grid of fire. Ejecting Rivet 1, we have a pilot down. Repeat Allied pilot down in the Zagros Range. The mission immediately devolved into a chaotic multi-domain brawl. As the pilot's parachute drifted toward the hostile mountain slopes, Iranian ground units, IRGC tunnel rats, emerged from secret shafts to begin a capture operation. The US and its allies were now suffering losses, and the meticulous plan was being rewritten in real time under a hail of anti-aircraft fire. The loss of the F-16 and the threat to the pilot forced CENTCOM to escalate. If the Iranians wanted to use the mountains as a shield, the US would turn those mountains into a spotlight. The USS Arleigh Burke and the USS Cole, loitering in the Arabian Sea, received new targeting coordinates. They didn't target the bunker, not yet. They targeted the mountain itself. They launched a volley of 24 BGM-109 Tomahawk Block 5 cruise missiles. Each BGM-109 Tomahawk was programmed to impact the cliff faces directly above the suspected Iranian launch sites. The goal was terrain denormalization. The massive explosions of the BGM-109 Tomahawks caused localized rock slides, burying the mouths of the Iranian caves and forcing the mobile Bavar 373 launchers to relocate into the open. Simultaneously, U.S. Navy EA-18G Growlers surged forward, unleashing a digital tsunami. They flooded the Iranian frequencies with so much electronic noise that the Iranian operators couldn't hear their own radios. With the launchers exposed and their communications jammed, the Israeli F-35s moved in for the kill. They launched AGM-158 JSMER standoff missiles from 60 miles away. The AGM-158 JSMER missiles used their infrared seekers to find the heat of the Iranian missile trucks, neutralizing the Berserker defense site by site. With the outer defense ring shattered and the Allied pilot being protected by a wall of lead from loitering A-10 Warthogs, the path was finally clear for the heavy hand. Two B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, which had been orbiting at 40,000 feet, began their final run. The target was the vulnerability point, a specific tectonic fault line in the granite directly above the enrichment lab. The B-2S released two GBU-57A/B Massive Ordnance Penetrators. These 30,000-pound bombs are designed to do what no other weapon can: survive the impact with solid rock and keep digging. The MOPs hit the mountain at over 1,100 miles per hour. For several seconds, there was no explosion, just the terrifying sound of 30 tons of hardened steel boring through 400 feet of solid granite. When the fuse finally triggered, the result was a subterranean inferno. The lab wasn't just blown up, the pressure wave had nowhere to go, so it followed the Iranian tunnel network like a lightning bolt. Secret tunnels that led back to the IRGC barracks were instantly turned into kills. The enrichment centrifuges were crushed by the weight of the mountain collapsing in on them. To the U.S. satellites above, the entire ridgeline seemed to drop 6 feet into the earth. The second lab, the unbeatable vault, was gone. Tran's response to the destruction of their primary nuclear asset was a frantic, uncoordinated surge of everything they had left in the regional theater. This was the Berserk phase in its purest form. From mobile launchers hidden in civilian warehouses along the coast, the IRGC unleashed a massive swarm of Shahed 136 suicide drones and Fateh 110 short-range ballistic missiles. They weren't aiming for the carriers. They were aiming for the Allied air bases in a desperate attempt to break the coalition's resolve. The sky over the Gulf of Oman became a graveyard for Iranian technology. The U.S. Fifth Fleet, integrated with the UAE's Falcon 1 batteries, established a multi-layered intercept shroud. The USS Arleigh Burke used its Aegis system to track over 50 simultaneous inbound tracks. They fired a ripple of RIM-174 SM-6 missiles to catch the high-speed Fateh 110 rounds as they re-entered the atmosphere. The RIM-174 SM-6 is a $4.3 million masterpiece of speed and precision designed to hit a maneuvering target at the edge of space. While the SM-6 took care of the ballistic threat, the shipboard CIWS and Allied F-16S dealt with the drones. The Shahed 136 drones, moving at a mere 115 miles per hour, were easy prey for the pilots who used their 20mm cannons to turn the swarm into a series of harmless fireballs over the water. Tran had thrown their final punch, and it had been swatted away without the Allied fleet even having to change course. The Iranian military was now effectively toothless in the region, their most secret assets reduced to radioactive dust beneath the Zagros range. The brutal reality of this engagement provided several vital lessons for military analysts worldwide. The most significant being that a super-hardened facility is no longer a guarantee of safety in the age of integrated lethality. Tran relied on the physical protection of the mountains, but they failed to account for the information dominance of the US and its allies. When the RC-135V rivet joint detected the uranium particulates, it proved that the US can see inside a mountain as easily as a legacy military sees across a battlefield. The ability to fuse satellite SIGINT with high-altitude atmospheric sampling has effectively ended the era of secret underground labs. Another lesson was the value of partnership. The US could have struck the site alone, but the participation of Israel, Jordan, and the UAE turned a tactical strike into a regional strategic alignment. This coordination showed that the US no longer needs to act as a lone policeman. It acts as the server for a regional network of power. The way the Israeli F-35s shared data with the US BGM-109 Tomahawks via cooperative engagement capability showed that the hardware is now less important than the software of war. An alliance that speaks the same digital language is essentially unbeatable. The final and most sobering lesson was the cost of deception. Iran's attempt to lure the US into a phantom base trap in the previous engagement only served to heighten US sensor sensitivity. By the time they tried to protect the real lab, the US was already operating at a Tier 1 level of awareness. Trans-berserk response proved that asymmetric tactics only work once. Once a superpower like the US decodes your playbook, every subsequent move you make only accelerates your own destruction. The math is simple. If you invite a tech giant to a high-intensity fight, your terrain and your tunnels will eventually become your tomb. The entire mission from the isotopes being detected to the final RIM-174SM6 intercept was executed with a level of professionalism that the IRGC simply cannot replicate. This is the satisfaction of efficiency that defines modern American power. It is the gratification of seeing a 30,000-pound GBU-57A/B bomb, a weapon that costs millions of US dollars to produce and thousands of man-hours to maintain, do exactly what it was designed to do with zero margin of error. The US didn't just destroy a lab, they destroyed the Iranian regime's confidence in their own geography. The Zagros Mountains are no longer a shield, they are a liability. The secret tunnels are no longer a highway, they are a death trap. For the sailors on the USS Arleigh Burke and the pilots of the Israeli Adir, the mission ended with a quiet target neutralized on their screens. There was no need for a victory parade because the result was never in doubt. As the Allied fleet moved back to their patrol stations, the world's energy markets continued to function, unaware that the most dangerous nuclear lab in the region had just been turned into a memory. The Berserker state had been silenced not by a single bullet, but by a flawlessly executed system of systems that owns the sky, the sea, and the earth beneath them. What part of this subterranean eraser was the most impressive to you? Was it the sheer kinetic power of the 30,000-pound bunker buster bomb, or the way the US and its allies shared data to blind the Iranian berserker defense? The Zagros range has hidden many secrets over the centuries, but in the era of the kill web, secrets don't stay hidden for long. If you want to stay on the cutting edge of military technology and see how the world's most advanced alliances stay one step ahead of their adversaries, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We provide second-by-second analyses of the weapons and strategies that define the modern world. Comment below with your own tactical analysis. Would you have used more BGM-109 Tomahawks, or was the MOP the only way to get the job done? Tron went berserk, but the US stayed clinical. That is the difference between a regime and a superpower. The watch continues.